this is Just Ask Julia, where we share tips, trends, and insights to help you transform your career and elevate your success. I am Julia Holian, and today we're going to talk about negotiating job offers. If you are watching the session live today, we will have a Q&A afterwards so that you can say and ask questions about absolutely anything. It could be about this presentation or anything else that's happening in your career around resumes, LinkedIn, interviewing, bad bosses, job decisions, whatever it might be. We are here to help. If you are watching this as a recording, please feel free to click the link in the description below, and you can sign up for future Just Ask Julia sessions and get more information that we like to share with our audiences about what's happening in the market. So we are going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my slides. All right, if you can't see that, please somebody just let me know, but let's go ahead and get started. So let's talk about how negotiations work and really about like what you should be thinking of. So I want to start off by talking about why these offers matter and looking at them so much more beyond the numbers and some of the pitfalls that we tend to encounter. So job offers are so integral to how our life is because it is not just the money and the compensation, but it is the lifestyle that it creates for us. It is how we manage our time. It affects our family. It affects what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. So I think it's always important for you to stop and think before you would accept a job offer, like what fits with you? What fits with where you are in your life? Do you live alone? Do you have roommates? Are you in a committed relationship? Do you have parents that need help? Do you have kids in your life? All of those things can be very important when you're thinking of the job offer. Doing that ahead of time, actually before the job offer, is really helpful because you're not so emotionally invested in the job offer itself yet. So doing that ahead, we think, is really smart. But I think when it really comes down to the offer itself, most people look at the salary or look at just the money factors of it, and they don't necessarily look at the bigger picture of what the job offer entails. And so that's what we're going to cover a lot of today. I think it's important to think, do these dollars make sense for me, currently? What are the other things that come into this job offer, and how is this going to affect my life? A lot of people look at like the big dollars, and that's like a short-term gain, but it doesn't always work out in the long term. So it's tempting to look at that high salary. It's tempting to get excited about the money. But is this role going to feel good to you in 1, 2, or 3 years? Is it going to burn you out really fast? Is it going to inspire you to do more? Everybody's different, so you've got to look at that individually for yourself. The basics of the job offer are typically going to be compensation and benefits, and that's what most people are thinking of. Compensation, salary, bonus, equity, perks, things like that. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Certainly the benefits could be health, it could be retirement, it could be time off, it could be other development things. But I think one of the things that people really skip over is it the right career fit for you? Is it the type of work that you want to do? Is it the place where you want to be? Is it the type of people that you want to be with? Is it going to give you the growth experience that you want, or the leadership? As a Gallup certified strengths coach, one of the things that I'm always focusing on with the people I work with is, are you doing the type of things or in the type of environment that inspires you? Because there's so much proof in the data that when you are doing something that you really enjoy, something that comes natural to you, something where you feel like you are contributing and you are getting a response back that's positive, that's where we find the value in what we do. So that's all part of the offer as well. It's looking at, are these my people? Are these the people who are going to support me? Am I going to want to support them? Is it the work that's going to inspire me? It's also looking at how all of that fits into the bigger picture. Now, if you're like me, I'm a bit of a workaholic. In the past, when I would start a new job, I would be that person who, for the first probably 6 months, was working 12-hour days. I was excited. I was inspired. It was new. It was fresh. It was interesting. I wanted to make an impact. Um, I also found that sometimes by the end of that first year, I was exhausted. So you have to think of the job and what is it going to demand of you, or what are you going to demand of yourself? There are a lot of jobs out there where you have to travel, or you are going to be expected to work these extraordinarily long hours. Is that going to work for you? Or is this a job that offers more flexibility? Does it have a really great team where not everything is on you? Is there are there other conditions about this that are going to make sense for you in the long term? So keeping all of these things in mind. Let's jump into talking about compensation, though, and kind of how it breaks down. So, the basic components to a compensation package are going to be, of course, your base salary, which I think is in many ways the most important, but we'll get back to that. There's the bonus, which is often, almost always, based on your base salary. So, it's a percentage of your base salary. It could be different from that, but it's something that is an add on. Sometimes it's guaranteed, sometimes it's not. There is equity, which if you are going into a company that is publicly traded, or wants to be publicly traded, how are they kind of structuring any kind of equity? I did put a couple of resources down below on this slide of two places I go to when I want to ask questions or learn. I really love fearlesssalary.negotiation.com by Josh Duty. If you get his newsletter, he is really good. He's more on the tech side of things, but he has really good scenarios that he lays out if you are looking at negotiating compensation, especially around equity. So does Devin Hennig, who has Boardroom Confidential, and he has YouTube and another newsletter that he puts out. So if you are in a role where you think that you're going to be looking specifically or particularly at equity, you might want to look at those two resources, because I think that they do a really, really good job of helping you sort of do the calculations of things. There's also a sign-on bonus. I'm not a big fan of sign-on bonuses. I think that sign-on bonuses are a feel good in the moment, but they are not your base salary. So they feels like in that first year, like you got this big bump, but then you don't have it in your next year. So your base salary is very important because so many things are factored based off of your base salary. It's your guaranteed money, but your bonus is usually a percentage of that. If you get a sign-on bonus, I'll be honest with you, I would, instead of negotiating for a sign-on bonus, let's just say the company is going to give you a $10,000 sign-on bonus. I would instead say, you know what, instead of a $10,000 sign-on bonus, could we discuss increasing my base salary by whatever number? You could start with 10,000, but maybe you land on 5,000. Even if that's $5,000 more a year in your first year, your incremental increases will be based on that larger number, which would not normally include your sign-on bonus. It would only include that base salary. Your bonuses would also be factored off of that higher base salary. So I'm not that fan of of sign-on bonuses. I would rather see a base salary that's increased. There's also terms around a sign-on bonus. When does it actually pay out? Sometimes it pays out in the beginning. Sometimes it doesn't pay out for 3 or 6 months. If you leave for some reason, you may have to pay it back. So there are terms that you have to look at in there. The other component of a compensation package is usually those hidden perks. Those are the things that are actually a lot more negotiable than people think about. People don't necessarily realize that they can negotiate other things into their compensation package. But again, most people focus on base salary, focus on bonus, and we are going to talk about like how do you negotiate, particularly on the base salary. But keep in mind that these are the different components. Now, again, you may not be in a company that's offering equity, so you may have to break this down to only the other 4. But looking at these and realizing the offer is not just that number that initially gets thrown out, that there are all of these other factors, will help you make a more educated decision. So let's talk a little bit about the benefits that can add some value, because this is where I think there's some real hidden um, um, perks, I guess I would say, to any kind of an offer. So let's just start with health insurance. First of all, believe it or not every company offers health insurance. If they don't offer health insurance, you should be looking at what increase in compensation directly into your base would you be getting each year to compensate for the fact that you don't have health insurance. And what some people are not aware of is that if you have a spouse and your spouse has health insurance, his or her, their company might have in their parameters that, for you, when you get that next job, that you actually have to take insurance through your own company. So there are some conditions that companies have built in because they don't necessarily want to carry the weight of everybody in the family. So you should maybe ask your significant other about that if that's a condition. But if you go into a company and you are on your spouse's or significant other's insurance, many companies will give you some kind of like a stipend that sort of covers the fact that you aren't using their insurance. So I have seen companies offer up to $500 a month extra because you are not taking their insurance. You can negotiate this. If you're like, I don't need insurance, I'm on so-and-so's insurance, so I don't need insurance. How do you compensate for that? Because even if they gave you $500 a month, that is significantly less than what they would be putting out in benefits and healthcare benefits. So definitely ask about that. Sometimes companies volunteer that. Sometimes they wait and they let that be something that you ask for. So I would consider that. Retirement plans. I think this is one of the biggest things to look at. Not every company offers a retirement plan, whether that's the 401k or a pension or some kind of a profit sharing. But you want to ask what does that entail? What do they offer? If they match, that's great. A lot of companies don't match, or they have some kind of a cap on that. But you can ask, about that retirement plan if they have it. A lot of companies don't let you get into a retirement plan until you've been there for a year. Did you know that you can negotiate that? You can negotiate and say, is there a way that I could have this after, my first 90 days? I have seen companies change when you can step into a retirement plan based on that negotiation. So if you want to get into that earlier, that is something that you could potentially talk about. I would also say retirement plans seem to be a big topic for those people who are a little bit older, because we're thinking a little bit more about how many years do we have till retirement, whether that be 10 or 20 or more years. The younger you are, I've just got to say this, start it as early as you can. Every single financial advisor out there will tell you that investing in your retirement early has a much, much bigger payoff. So if you are 35 and you're like, I haven't done this, it's never too late to start. But if you are 25, boy, will you be ahead of the game if you start really young. So definitely start thinking about those retirement plans. You can also negotiate PTO. You can negotiate time off. You can negotiate even sometimes to have a sabbatical. I have started to see sabbaticals be a lot more common, especially in some of the bigger companies, but I've seen some medium-sized companies as well. So consider that. I had 2 clients last year who were in jobs where when they hit the 5-year mark, their company said, go away. You have 3 months or whatever the time frame was. I think some companies just do 1 month. So you get sort of like a 1 month and you could add on your PTO. But sabbaticals are something that you can negotiate. Going back to the PTO, a lot of companies I know tier things where they say, we offer X number of days or weeks, when you've been there for, 1 to 2 years or 2 to 5 years. That's all negotiable. So that's one of the easiest things, quite frankly, for most HR teams to flex on. You can also ask for allowances, whether that be auto, whether that be phone. If you are traveling for the company, you can ask that you make sure you get all the points on your credit card, not on the company's credit card. So you are earning the travel points. Those points could be applying to air travel, to hotel, to cars, all of those things. So if you know you're going to travel for the company, definitely ask about what you get reimbursed for and where all those points go, because the ideal is that you get the points, the company doesn't get the points. And that's something that a lot of people overlook. Wellness and lifestyle perks. A lot of people don't think about these things, but this could be gym memberships. This could be access to therapists and to other, well-being type of coaches and other types of programs. I think a lot more companies are starting to implement that. If they don't have one, but you belong to one, don't be afraid to come forward and say, I have, I pay for these, perks. Is this something that the company would be willing to cover for me? Would you be willing to cover my gym membership or some kind of a retreat that I like to take each year? Which then goes into the last area that I think is one of the biggest ticket items for most people that we should be pushing companies to cover for us. And that is any kind of professional development or education. So I think right now, with a lot of people taking online courses, which are a little maybe less expensive than some of the formerly the in-person, but go ahead and say, I want to make sure that I am covered, for the courses that I want to take, during this year. Or if you have certifications that have to have a certain amount of continuing education credits put into that, does the company pay for that? Do they actually sponsor those types of courses? Are those something that you get on your own? All of those things you can negotiate to have them reimbursed or paid up front, or see what kind of programs they have. But I think all of this comes back to the idea that I want you to think it's not just about where you are today. All of these things are contributors to your future. So your health insurance, your retirement plans contribute to what your future life is. Your professional development and education can make a difference in where your career goes. So thinking not just about today, but thinking like 5 years, even 10 years down the road, where do I want to be? And I know some people hate that question of like, what do you want to be in 10 years? But I think more, it's less about where do you want that title and that career to be, but more about like, where do I want my life to be? And what things am I making sure are part of the compensation package that are going to get me there? So as you're going into any kind of a job offer, I want you to think about some other things that, again, kind of get overlooked. I know for those of you who work with me one-on-one, we're always talking about these things, but titles don't always reflect the day-to-day. I've seen titles that are really big, but you're really in the trenches all the time. You're not talking about strategy, you're in the tactical. I've seen titles that are kind of low, but you are up here in a high decision-making, role. I think you've got to look at those and balance them out. How am I being compensated for what I'm expected to contribute and deliver? Is this title reflective of the work I'm going to do? Is this a strategic or a tactical role? Or is it actually both of those things? In which case I'm running interference on both ends. Are you in a position of making decisions, or are you in a position of sort of taking orders and delivering on those orders? What kind of demands are going to be on you? Are you doing all that heavy lifting? How many hours do you think it's going to, a week, or, what type of contribution do you have to make to get your job done? And then I think always looking at, in this position, is this a stepping stone to a promotion? Am I learning something new? So let me put a pin in this for a moment and just say, I know that today's market is pretty rough. And there are a lot of people who are probably listening to this going, you know what, Julia? I just want a job. I just want the money. I just want the benefits. I want the security. I want to know that I have that. And I am the first one to tell you that if you just need to take a job to take a job, I totally get that. And that's not uncommon in any market. But I think in this market right now, there seems to be a little bit more of an urgency around that. But that said, I think you've got to have a plan. If you take the job just to take it, make sure you've got a plan for the first 2 years. What do you want to learn? What do you need to invest in yourself? Maybe that means you need to take a course on the side. Maybe you need to go back to school a little bit. Maybe you want to get a certification. Who do you need to meet? Maybe if you know, like, this is the job that you have to take today, but going forward, you want to be somewhere else in a couple of years. This job is a blessing because this job is going to give you the security of the financial security. It could be very demanding, so you have to think of that demand, but think of what do I need to do to, or what do I need to put in my toolbox to get me to where I need to be in a year or two, so I am marketable for that next job that I want. This job is going to ride me through this, but having a plan so that you know this is what I'm going to learn, this is what I'm going to gain, this is what's going to help me propel my career. There's a lot of chatter right now out in the market. As a matter of fact, I put a post out on LinkedIn about this a week or two ago about how our careers are going to become portfolio careers. We're no longer expected to stay in one industry or one profession for the entirety of our lives, that we are building out our careers like a portfolio where we are potentially going to move in some different directions. And we're going to look at our careers as a toolbox. What are you putting into that toolbox so that you are marketable to other things that you want to do? And I think the real benefit of that is that as you grow and you change and you want to do different things and you are not inspired by the same things you were when you were 28, but you're inspired by new things now, thinking of your career like a portfolio gives you a little bit of that flexibility and freedom to think of, what do I want to do with this next job? And how is that going? What do I want to put into that toolbox so that I am building out this portfolio for myself? Lastly, on this slide, I think that one of the key things to understand going into an offer is, like, how are you going to be measured? Like, what is that first 90 days going to look like in that first year? I would not wait for a company to outline that for me. I think as part of your interview process or the negotiation process might be, hey, I'm looking at my first 30, 60, 90 days and what I'm supposed to accomplish. And I want to make sure that that's in alignment with what you are thinking of as well, so that we are getting kicking this off on a really good note. And then looking at, what do you want me to accomplish by the end of this year? Here's what I'm thinking based on the conversation that we've had. Let's talk about that. So that negotiation is also just making sure you're setting yourself up for success. So when it comes to compensation, I think that there are kind of four things that you really have to think about. You have to think about data. You've got to get really good detail about what the market is. I put some things here at the bottom of the slide, like researching through salary.com or payscale.com, or going to Glassdoor, or a new site that I recently was introduced to, which is called levels.fyi, which is kind of interesting, sort of an analysis of different levels and compensation packages. But I also think you've got to look at the job postings out there on job boards. I think you should talk to other people who are in similar roles. Like, don't be afraid to reach out to somebody on LinkedIn and say, hey, I see that you've been doing this job at such and such company for the last 3 years. I'm interviewing with a completely different company, same type of role though. And I'm looking at compensation and I'm thinking that this is the range for it. Would you be open to letting me know if you see that I'm in line, if that's in line with what you're seeing in the market, or are you seeing something different? People will answer those types of questions because you're not asking really anything of them to other than to kind of confirm and give their 2 cents. So ask other people, and don't be afraid to ask AI. Like, go into Chat GPT and just really ask it. Don't ask it like a surface level question, but like dig in. What are you seeing in this market and that market? And how are these comparable? And what are the breakdowns? AI is going to be your friend when it comes to negotiating. But let's talk about a couple of scripts here. I think I've got 4 in here. This is really focused on salary. But in that initial offer, let's just say the employer comes out and says, we'd like to offer you $145,000. And I am going to tell you that you should always negotiate. Like every employer actually expects you to negotiate. So just go into it planning that that's what you're going to do. So if they offer you 145 and you're like, that's not really what I'm looking for, your script might be, thank you for the offer. I'm very interested in this role and excited to make a real difference for the team. Based on the scope of responsibilities, current market benchmarks for similar positions, and the impact I know I'm going to make, I was expecting to see a base salary in the range of 160,000. Can we talk about that? Can we talk about adjusting the offer? That's how you might approach that. To focus on the market data, you might say, I reviewed compensation data for comparable roles in whatever the market is, and the median salary for this level is closer to, and you put out that range. Considering my background in your expertise and the impact that you're going to make, I believe this range is more in line with the market and the demands of this position. So you go back to that number that you are increasing from that 145 to maybe a range between 160 to 170. I think shoot high. You can always, in that negotiation, you can always meet maybe, in the middle. If you're talking about value and impact, which I think you have to do, you can talk about data, but I think you've really got to hone in on the value that you're going to make in that role. So you're going to talk about data, you're going to talk about value and impact, you're going to talk about the responsibility, and you're going to talk about you're just going to be candid and open with them. So your value and impact might sound like, I bring deep expertise in this area with 14 years of experience in accomplishing these things. Given the scale of responsibility in this role, I expected the base salary to be closer to such and such number. Can we explore increasing the base to that amount? I've done a number of negotiations with people where we have taken this kind of an approach of, here's what I'm going to deliver for you. That is the value that you're getting. I'm going to pay for myself. That's really what you're trying to sell to them is, I'm going to pay for myself. So don't worry about the money. Just understand that whatever I bring to the table, it's going to make the difference for you. Now, the offer, if it comes in low, another way of looking at this, let's just say the offer comes in at 130,000, but the range that they posted was up to 150. Couple of different scripts here. You could say, thank you for the offer. I noticed that the posted range for this role was 130 to 155. And given my years of experience and the impact that we've discussed in my interviews, and you can give an example of that, I expected an offer closer to, and then you throw out your number. I would always throw that out at 155. But I think the big question is, can you share how you arrived at this number? Because you want to get information from them as to why they came in at that amount. You could also say, I want to clarify. I saw the posted range for this role, and you list the range again, and the offer's at the very bottom of that. So for me personally, I like to have those little attention getters, the offers at the very bottom of that. Could you walk me through the factors that determine this offer? From my perspective, based on my background and what I know I'm going to deliver, an offer at the top of the range makes more sense. So you're coming into it with curiosity, but you're definitely kind of holding them a little bit to the fire of like, why would you come in at the low end? So hopefully those scripts will help you. If you want more information like this, by the way, we do have an online community where if you are in at the accelerator level, we have a ton of resources around compensation and negotiation and interviewing. So there'll be a slide later about that, but I just want to point that out. If you want more information like this, we can help you out in a lot of different ways, and the community might be the fastest, most direct way to do that. So going beyond the salary, just remember, when you're talking about the role, you've got to really understand the scope of responsibilities. You can also negotiate your start date or even a schedule. So people don't always think about that. Maybe you want to start later in the day, maybe because of the people that you're going to be working with, you adjust your hours. So you could negotiate your start date. You could negotiate the schedule that you work. I think onboarding is a big thing that you can negotiate as well. Like what kind of onboarding? So maybe maybe going into this role, part of your onboarding is to be specifically put into a training course that they have, or you're assigned a mentor, or they immediately help compensate for a course that you take outside of their outside of the job. You should also talk about review cycles. And the offer is like, hey, I wanted to find out, what is your review cycle? When do you typically promote? When do you start talking about, the milestones and successes? Is this quarterly? Is this annually? How do you do all of that? When are increases, brought into the conversation? And then finally, you can also talk about flexibility. Um, Things like, can you work remotely? Do you have to be in the office all the time? Things like that. So other things that you can negotiate just beyond the salary. So after you say, yes, I do want you to really think about onboarding, who owns your onboarding? Onboarding is your first big introduction to the company. It will tell you a lot about how they operate. Did they just kind of like throw you a laptop and, tell you where the bathroom is and that's kind of it? Or did they get into really bringing you into the organization, introducing you to the right people, talking to you about, what is needed in the team, checking in with you regularly? There's a lot that goes into onboarding. I find that even today, I think employees have to push to make sure that they know what that's going to look like. I have a number of tools that I give my clients when they start a new job so that they can make sure that those conversations take place and they are set up for success. I think you want to always ask the hiring manager that you're working with about, what are my early wins supposed to look like? Are they defined, or are you just going to kind of, start at a full sprint and kind of have to figure it out on your own? You should ask about tools and training, in that those first few months on the job. Definitely ask about how success is measured. I think that's a great question to ask earlier in the interview process, but circle back to it at the offer stage to make sure that you're on the same page. And then lastly, for your decision framework, if you don't have a scoring system, come talk to us, because we have a scoring system. We have documents in our community in the Accelerate program where you can score your opportunity against your non-negotiables. You can compare your long-term values to your short-term values to your long-term values. So we have a number of different worksheets to help you work through that. But I think one of the big things is to always trust your instincts. And I have a friend who put out a newsletter this last week, and she was talking about how we make decisions, and that sometimes when we talk to our friends or family, or we even ask ChatGPT, what should I do? The answer that you get back and your reaction to that answer tells you a lot. So if you ask a family member or a friend what you should do, and they give you an answer and you don't like that, listen to that. What is it that you really don't like about it? That might tell you, that it's not the answer that they gave that you're really listening to. It's like, what was your gut reaction to it? If that is not what you wanted to do, and there was another thing you were hoping that they would give a different answer, that tells you something, that you really wanted the other answer. Contrast that with, if they gave you the answer that you wanted to hear, that is validation for you. So trust your gut. I think we question ourselves a lot. Really think, what is my reaction to the different variables? If your reaction is really negative, that's not the way to go. If your reaction is more positive, then that's telling you something. And then lastly, the offer is always the start of the relationship. How they react to you negotiating is a signal to you as to how they're going to behave when you work there. So if they embrace that and they come forward and they want to make some changes, that tells you that they are more open and willing. If they don't do that, that tells you something about the company as well. So again, if you want more help on this, look at our community. We have 3 levels. We have a free version. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles and the worksheets though, but you can certainly get into the community on the free version. We also have the Accelerate version, which is what I think anybody who's in a job search would want to tap into, where you can get a ton of resources and information. We have monthly goals and programs, and we have weekly coaching. So definitely check that out. And then finally, thank you for being here. And if you want to learn more about us, go to our website at Career Transformation Partners. If you want to see other episodes of this Just Ask Julia, you can go to our YouTube channel and you can see what we've put up for the last 3.5 years. So that is it for today's topic. If you are watching this live, we are going to jump into an open forum Q&A. For those of you who are watching this on replay on YouTube, thank you for tuning in. You can click the link in the description below to sign up for future Just Ask Julias.